Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I am your host, Preston Proctor. Okay, so let's just get this, clear this up first thing. The Preds lost last night, 8-4 in Arizona. Enough said. Of course, say enough said, but, got to bring it up later because we're going to be talking about it because, it was a road game and we're still on the road. It wasn't the best night for Western Conference playoff position teams with Winnipeg, LA, Colorado, Nashville, and Vancouver losing. Edmonton, Dallas, and Vegas won, but then they were playing the other teams, and somebody has to win. Respectively, they played LA, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. So Edmonton beat LA, Dallas beat Vancouver, and Vegas beat Winnipeg. Was looking forward to Vegas beating Winnipeg, but I did not expect the Preds to lose. Excuse me. Okay. Of course, when two teams play, somebody has to win. So Dallas did clinch a playoff spot last night by winning, and Vegas winning with LA losing. They swapped positions in the standings. Okay, so enough about last night. Tomorrow night's opponent is the Colorado Avalanche in Colorado. The Colorado Avalanche are 46-21-6. They are 28-7-1 at home. 28 wins, 7 losses, 1 overtime loss at home. That's pretty good. Pretty good there, buddy. The Avalanche lost at overtime last night for the first time at home. They lost at home for the first time last night, 3-2 in a shootout with the Rangers. The Avalanche are second in the Central Division with 98 points. They are 3 points behind Dallas with 1 game in hand. They are 4 points ahead of Winnipeg, and both Winnipeg and Colorado have 9 games left. The Avalanche are 8-2 in their last 10 games and have lost 2 in a row. Soon to be 3. Yeah, maybe 3. Let's say 3 in a row. Let's. I'm not going to say that. They lost to Montreal on Tuesday, and that ended their 9-game winning streak. And these last 10 games, 3 were against teams that were currently in playoff positions. All of those games against playoff position teams went to overtime. They got overtime wins against Vancouver, 4-3, and Edmonton, 3-2, and they lost to the Rangers last night. Also during that time, they had 2 other overtime wins, but they were against teams not in playoff positions, Pittsburgh and Minnesota. So they've been going to extra time a lot here lately. And like I said, the last 10 games, they're 8-2. Only 3 of the teams were in playoff positions. So, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Arizona's not in playoff position either. And did I say enough about that game yet? Well, we've got more coming. So, anyhow, tomorrow night's game is the last of a 5-game homestand for the Avalanche. Their last 6 games of the season will include having to play 5 playoff positioned teams. So they're not going to have a very easy end to the season. Heading into the trade deadline, they made a number of trades, not on the last day, but leading up to it. I think they only made 1 trade on the last day, but like in the last week, they were busy. They made 6 trades. They made trades with Anaheim, Nashville, Minnesota, Buffalo, Philadelphia, and New Jersey. Running through it real quick. With Anaheim, they got a 5th-round pick this year for forward Ben Myers. So they traded someone for a pick in this year's draft. Nashville, they got Yakov Trenton, forward Yakov Trenton from Nashville, and defenseman Graham Sword, or the rights to him, for defenseman Jeremy Hansel and a 3rd-round pick in 2025. With Minnesota, they received forward Brandon Duhaime for a 3rd-round 2026 pick. Buffalo, they got forward Casey Middlestat for defenseman Bowen Byram. They traded with New Jersey to get forward Zakhar Bardakov and a 7th-round pick in 2024 for defenseman Curtis McDermott. Philadelphia, they traded for defenseman Sean Walker, previously a Kings player. Played for the Kings. Yes, he played for the Kings. I'm a Kings fan. Harder to be a Kings fan. I don't watch very many of the games anymore. Haven't done a lot of that since we moved here. So my recollection of the Kings playing is pretty much when they play Nashville now. But anyway, so they got defenseman Sean Walker from Philadelphia and a 5th-round pick in 2026 for forward Ryan Johansson and a conditional 1st-round pick in 2025. Save that for the end because I wanted to know what the conditional part of that was. And it's interesting that if the Avs' 1st-round pick in 2025 is a top 10 pick, then Philadelphia doesn't get that pick. They get the 1st-round pick in 2026. So that's kind of interesting. If it's a really good pick, you don't get it. But if it's a top 10 pick, I guess Colorado didn't do that well, so maybe they want to keep it. Anyhow, I thought that was interesting. Looking at this trade stuff can be pretty interesting. Not always, but okay. The Nashville Predators. The Predators are 43, 26, and 4, 22, 11, and 3 on the road after losing last night in Arizona. Oh, the Preds are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. Both of those losses were on the road last night and in overtime at Minnesota. They are 4-1-1 away during this 10-game stretch. And since February 16th, they are 16-1-2. So, okay, they lost last night, Arizona. Maybe they were looking past them to Colorado. I don't know. They started out strong. But in the end, they lost. So we're not done with that because I got to talk about stats later. So anyhow, moving on. Colorado is the last game of this 2-game road trip. The Preds come home for 2 next against Boston and St. Louis. Then they go away for 2, and then the next 4 alternating home and away, bouncing around between here and Chicago and Pittsburgh. After Colorado, the Preds will only play 2 teams currently in playoff positions for the rest of the season. Both of those will be at home against Boston and Winnipeg. The Preds are currently 4th in the Central Division with 90 points. They are 4 points behind Winnipeg and even on games played. Dallas is on top with 101 points. Then comes Colorado at 98 and Winnipeg at 94. Dallas has played 1 more game than the Jets, Avs, and Preds. But as far as Colorado goes, they're 3 points behind. So, yeah, game in hand still puts them Still would put them behind Dallas if they win that one. Winnipeg has lost their last 5 games. The Devils, Islanders, Capitals, Oilers in overtime, and Vegas. Talking a little bit more about Winnipeg, because they are the team. If the Preds were to catch a team and be one of the division spots for the playoffs, it right now looks like it'd have to be Winnipeg. So, Winnipeg has lost 5 games in a row. This is their second 5-game losing streak of the year. They had one at the end of January. Winnipeg has a mix of stronger and weaker teams ahead on their schedule. They play Ottawa Saturday, LA on Monday, and then a few games later, they come to Nashville on April 9th. That could be a pivotal game. It will be either way, I'm sure. At that point, hard to say. Hard to say where we'll be. And I don't. Anyway, I want to say it, but I'm not going to say it. I'm thinking it. And maybe that's the beginning of the problem. All right. So the Preds are in the first wild card spot with 9 games remaining. They are now 3 points ahead of LA. LA fell behind Vegas by 1 point, so that put them in the wild card spot instead of Vegas. We've been talking about being ahead of Vegas. I still look at that because LA is only 1 point behind Vegas, but they have a game in hand. So, I think you could see them swapping places depending on, when games, when they play their games, from day to day, they could be swapping places. I still think LA is going to finish ahead of Vegas, but what do I know? I'm just a guy behind a microphone. Okay, then. So, the Preds are 8 points ahead of the Blues and even on games left. So that's the next team that might be able to contend for the playoffs. 9 games left. They're 8 points behind the Blues. Since they're 1 point, since the Kings are 1 point, 3 points behind the Kings, that would put them 5 points behind LA, 6 points behind Vegas. Are the Blues going to be able to retake? Hard to say. Minnesota is next behind St. Louis. They're down to St. Louis by 3 points with a game in hand. So, it's looking harder for Minnesota at this point. Not technically ruled out yet, but, if I were to apply my same metric on ruling teams out for the playoffs, I guess it would be the same. It'd be the same. So, they're 5 points behind LA with 5 games behind with 9 games left. So not quite there yet. Minnesota, then they've got 10 games left and they'd be behind by 8. So, there you go. If the playoffs did start today, the Preds would be matched up with Vancouver. The Canucks are now 3 points behind Dallas with a game in hand. Arizona, Anaheim, Chicago, and San Jose have been eliminated from playoff consideration. Seattle is 14 points out with 10 games left, and Calgary is 16 points out with 10 games left. So that, for all intent and purposes, we can count them out. Okay, tomorrow night's game. It is the third and final game with Colorado this year, and the only one in Colorado. The Preds have won both home games, 4-3 in November and 5-1 earlier this month. I guess I somehow, when I was talking about the game yesterday, I missed. They actually played 3 games. I must not have was looking at my spreadsheet and it only showed me the 2 games. So I apologize for that. But so I checked it. So I checked to make sure. So this is the 3rd and final game with Colorado this year. The Preds have won the other 2. Both of those were in Nashville, 4-3 in November, 5-1 earlier this month. So the Preds have won the series. Big deal. We want to win tomorrow night. We've got to keep this train going. Little bump in the road last night. Yeah, it sucks. You can't really expect to win all of your games. So, the question really becomes, what do they do now? How are they going to turn it around? And they have to turn it around against Colorado. So, this is a playoff game. For all intents and purposes, they lost last night. They've got to work hard. They've got to get in playoff mode. So they're playing a playoff team. They need to win, and they're coming off a bad loss. So this is really going to test their playoff mentality. Okay, so back in November, in the 4-3 win for the Preds, it was the second game of a 6-game winning streak. The loss for Colorado ended their 3-game winning streak, but they did go on to win their next 4 games. So they were playing well when we ran into them back in November, and we beat them 4-3. As far as the scoring went, both teams scored 1 in the first, with Colorado getting the first goal. Nashville went ahead in the second, but Colorado got 2 in the second. The Preds then got 2 in the third, holding Colorado scoreless. A fun fact, excuse me, Yakov Trenin got the game-winning goal. Yes, Yakov Trenin got the game-winning goal against Colorado back in November, and now he's playing for Colorado. Okay, that's not a symmetry I want to bring up, but a potential symmetry that I want to bring up. Don't want to bring that up. Not going to bring it up. In February, in the 5-1 win, it was the last of an 8-game winning streak for the Preds that had started February 17th. The U2, it was part of the streak after the U2 concert decision. The Preds lost in overtime at home to Montreal next. Then they lost in overtime to Minnesota, and then won 6 more. For Colorado, they had a 2-game winning streak coming into the game, and then followed that loss with 9 wins. So, again, Colorado playing well when they ran into the Preds, but the Preds were playing better. As far as the scoring went, both teams got 1 in the first, except Nashville got the first goal this time, did not get the first goal in the previous game. They got the first goal. Here we go, whistling again. The only score in the second was by Nashville. Nashville also held Colorado scoreless in the third and got 3 goals, including an empty netter by Cody Glass for his hat trick. Colorado enters the game on a 2-game losing streak. Previously, when we've met them, they were on a winning streak both times. Before that 2-game losing streak, they were on a 9-game winning streak. So you'd have to say that they're still playing well. And, of course, the Preds lost last night, and previously they were on a 6-game winning streak and an 18-game point streak. So both teams are playing well coming into tomorrow night's game. All right, the stats on the road. This is where we get to talk even more about last night's game. Oh, I can't wait. Let's just keep talking about this game over and over again. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so the Preds are 22-11-3 on the road. Pretty good record. Last night, they lost 8-4 to Arizona. They did get the first 2 goals. Started out real well, both by new Pred Jason Zucker. So they got the first goal of the game. They got the second goal of the game. And I guess we could just stop talking about the game at this point. They then gave up 2 in the first, so they wound up tying in the first period. In the second, the Preds got a goal, but the Coyotes managed to get 2 before that goal and 2 after. So Coyotes got 4 goals in the second period. Ergo, Preds lost the second period. The third had, interestingly enough, 2 empty net goals, with the Predators getting 1 in between. And Logan Cooley got a hat trick last night. The second empty netter goal gave him his third. Other than that, I think all the scoring was done by nobody else had more than 1 goal. So the scoring was pretty balanced for the Predators. Maybe even one of the I don't think we have vendors walking in the aisles at hockey games. But one of the vendors may have gotten a goal too. It's hard to, but they got enough goals last night, enough points. Maybe one of the beer vendors got one of the points too. So lots of points to go around. Okay, so on the road, they are pretty even on how they perform in each period. In the first period, 15, 9, and 12. So nice little numbers there. This is, how whether they would win, lose, or tie that period. Last night, they tied the first period. So 15 times they've won it, 9 lost, 12 tied. The second period, 14, 14, and 8. Again, they lost the second period last night. Fairly even between winning and losing the second period. And then in the third period, 13, 12, and 11. Nice little progression there. Of course, they lost the third period last night. When they get the first goal, which they did last night, they are 18-4-1, 15-4-1 if they get it in the first period, 3-0-0 if they get it in the second period. If they don't get it, they're 4-7-2, 3-6-2 in the first, and 1-1 in the second. They got the first goal last night, of course. It may have mattered for 5 minutes. Getting the first goal on the road, improves their record for the first period to 14-2-7 from 15-9-12. So usually 14 wins, get the first goal, 14 wins for the first period, 2 losses, 7 ties. So, which number went up. So from 15 wins to 14 wins, 9 losses, 2 losses. So usually getting the first goal changes that. Second period, pretty even. 9 wins, 7 losses, 7 ties, from 14 wins, 14 losses, and 8 ties. So, it was pretty even before, pretty even after. And with the third being 9, 5, and 9, 9 wins, 5 losses, 9 ties, down from 13, 12, and 11. Overtime is 1, 1, and 1. Very even. So not much of a determining factor there. If they don't get the first goal, they have a losing record for every period. 1, 7-5 in the first, 5, 7-1. And you might say that one's close to being even. It's still a losing record. 4, 7-2 in the third, 0, 2-1 in overtime. And in a shootout, if they don't get the first goal and it goes to a shootout, they're 1-0-0. So last night they tied one period, the first, lost 2. If they win the first period, they're 12-2-1, 7-3-5-1 if they lose, 7-4-1 if they tied last night. 7-4-1 is their record if they tie. So, but we're looking forward to tomorrow night's game, right? So that's what we're thinking of. If they win the first period, they're 12-2-1. So when they win the first period against Colorado tomorrow night, that will improve their record from 12-2-1. If they tie one period, like they did last night, I got to stop this. They're 11-5. If they win one period, they're 6-6. Losing one period, 9-2. So if they only lose one period, they're 9-2. So that's pretty good. Tying one period, 11-5. But if they tie two periods on the road, they're 6-1. If they win two periods, they're 15-0. If they lose two periods, they're 0-9. So that's kind of the stat that's kind of interesting, right? That they win two, they win, lose two, lose. Tie two, 6-1. So, I'm guessing if they tie two, usually they win the other period, but anyway, let's keep going. When the Preds win, 45% of the time, the winning goal is in the third period, 14% of the time in the first, and 27% in the second. So 45% of the time the winning goals in the third period, which, looking at the data and finding where it's interesting, at home, the highest percentage is in the second period. So on the road, it's the third period. When they lose on the road, the winning goal's never been in the first period, which it was not last night. It was in the second period, which 57% of the time has been. That number went up after yesterday. 21% of the time in the third and 21% of the time in overtime. Overall, numbers changed a little bit last night, but it's around 35% for the second and third periods. So the winning goal overall by either team. So 35% of the time, the winning goal is scored in the second or third period. But for the opponents on the road, 57% of the time in the second and 45% of the time for the Preds in the third. So it's really kind of interesting to see how all that works itself out. Looking at scoring by period, the Preds have outscored their opponents in the first and third periods. Before last night, it was in all three. Now in the second period, they've been outscored by 1. In the first, roughly half the time, they are as likely to outscore the opponents by 1 as to be outscored by 1. And so it's 25%, and then a third being a tie. So the delta in the first period is going to be 1 or less so far. The second period, it's about the same as the first, with the tie dropping to 22% from a third. The third period, the likelihood of a 1-goal differential for either team is roughly equal, 19% for the Preds, 22% for the opponents, and still about a third for a tie. An interesting stat, they have not been outscored by more than 1 on the road in the first period. Really kind of an interesting stat there. So So that's the numbers. That's the breakdown there. So that's what we're looking forward to. We're not looking forward to, but that's the sort of things that happen on the road. They're playing Colorado on the road tomorrow night. Both teams are playing well. Both teams lost last night. Colorado is now on a 2-game losing streak, but have been playing well. The Preds have been playing well. So it should be a fun game, hopefully with a really good result for the Nashville Predators. So there you go. That's what we're looking at for tomorrow night. Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.